Center for Metals in Biology and Medicine and has authored over 100 peer-reviewed publications, largely in the area of cardiovascular effects of inhaled pollutants. All right, Dr. Campen, thank you so much for being here. And I thought we should start by having you explain exactly what microplastics and nanoplastics are.
Sure. Katie, thanks so much for having me on. The degradation of plastics that we use all the time is something that takes years, decades. We throw things away, and they break down. There's a slow chemical process. Part of what makes plastics wonderful is that they're very resilient and durable. We can use them for a long time, but eventually they break and they become shards, and those shards get smaller and smaller. So when we say microplastics, we're using the metric scale. So if you think of centimeter, um, we get down to micrometers, which is really too small to be seen by the human eye, but even smaller than that is nanometers. So the distinction between a microplastic and a nanoplastic essentially is whether it's bigger or smaller than 1 micrometer. And what I'll say is what we've observed in the brains and in the other organs is these nanoplastics that are about 100 to 400 nanometers in length and sort of skinny. They look like flakes, and um, they're about the size of a couple of viruses laid side by side. So it gives you the idea of scale. They're very, very tiny and definitely throughout the body.
And I know microplastics are everywhere these days. We keep hearing about them. But what impact do they have on our bodies? Because I've heard about them getting into all kinds of places, even in the placentas of unborn children, right?
We we've published a few of those studies, and in fact, we had a press release recently from a colleague at Baylor College of Medicine, Enrico Barroso, who showed that there might be a link between preterm birth and the exposures to these plastics. We are just at the cusp of understanding what these things might be doing in our bodies. We are still struggling with the technologies to detect them. We're still struggling with getting the right tissue samples in the right patients. So it's going to be a while before we are really confident about the health outcomes, the diseases that might be caused or exacerbated by these plastics. Um, Right now, there's a hint from a group in Italy, Raffaele Marfella and his team in the spring of this last year showed linked to cardiovascular disease that was pretty alarming, but it was also associative. Same with our study showing a link with high levels in Alzheimer's patients. Very associative. Too soon to put a confident statement that this is causing any diseases.
Right. And I read that people with dementia or Alzheimer's often have a thinner blood-brain barrier. So they're likely to have more microplastics and nanoplastics travel to their brain. So it's hard to say if that was a cause or if it was just the result of a thinner blood-brain barrier that is present in those kinds of patients. Let's talk about the study in particular, how many brains you studied and from what years and what you found.